This video will talk more about meter and how we write rhythms into those meters and time signatures. In music, we need to show the meter not only by how we write the time signature, but also how we write the rhythm patterns and how those patterns fit into the meter. The common note groupings are affected by if it's a simple meter, which would be groups of 2/8 notes, or if it's a compound meter, which would be groups of 3/8 notes. By grouping the notes together properly, it makes it a lot easier for performers to read the rhythms. And a quick note that some vocal music, actually a lot of vocal music, does not follow note grouping conventions because they usually put separate notes for each syllable or each word in vocal music. So this is primarily for instrumental works. The general principle we want to follow is that we want to show each beat in a measure. We don't want to obscure any beats because that makes it harder for the performer to keep track of where those beats are. Remember that in a simple meter, groups of 2/8 notes, the basic beat that we're using is a single quarter note, and in compound meter we use a dotted quarter note. Anything shorter than those two benchmarks should be beamed together within each beat, as long as there's no rest or anything else weird going on. So for instance, in a simple meter, our basic beat is a quarter note. We would want to show individual beats by beaming 2/8 notes together, 4/16 notes together, or combinations of 8th notes, 16th notes, and rests that equal one count. Here's a great example of clearly grouped notes in a 3/4 time. That would be a simple triple meter. You can see that there are 3 beats in that measure because all of those 8th notes are grouped into groups of 2. Here's an example in 2/4 where we have 4/16 notes beamed together. Just glancing at that, we can see that there are 2 separate beats in that measure. Here's 3/4 example again, but we've got combinations of 8th notes and 16th notes, and because those are grouped into 3 chunks there, we can see the 3 beats, and we can assume that each of those notes that are the first note in the group falls on a particular beat. Don't forget that you can also have dotted 8th note and 16th note combinations by adding a dot to the 8th note and adding a half beam to the other 8th note beam to show the 16th note. That one also shows 3 beats clearly. In 4/4 time, it's best to show all 4 beats, but occasionally we can get away with only showing you beat 1 and beat 3. In the first example, we start off beat 1 dotted quarter note and then a single 8th note, and then beat 3 starts a new beam of 4 8th notes. That would be a good example. In the second 4/4 example, we have a half note tied to a quarter note for a 3-count note followed by a rest. The bridge over beat 3 is a tie. But in the third example, you can see that we've got beat 1, and then beats 2 and 3 are kind of obscured. We obscure beat 3 by having that half note there. So the second one there should be the preferred way of showing a 3-count note in 4/4, not the last one. In compound meter, remember that our basic beat is a dotted quarter note. That should say dotted, excuse me. We're going to show the individual beats by beaming 3/8 notes together, 6/16 notes together, or combinations that equal 1.5 counts now. Here's an example in 9/8. Our basic beat there starts off with a dotted quarter note, and then we have 2 groups of 3/8 notes each. It's very clear to see the 3 beats in that measure. Here are groupings of 6/16 notes. In 6/8, that would be compound duple, so we need to show 2 beats, and that example clearly shows that. Here is an example in 9/8 that shows combinations of 8th notes and 16th notes, and again, you can clearly see the 3 individual beats by how those notes are beamed together. And also in compound meter, you can have dotted dotted 8th, 16th patterns, and there's a 9/8 example that has 3 beats. And then you can have quarter and eighth pairs So on our first example here, we've got a regular quarter note followed by an eighth note, and then a quarter note and an eighth note, and then the last beat is beamed together. We would not want to have combined the last 4 eighth notes in a beam, because that would not show us the beats as clearly. In this example, you might think you want to beam those 2 separate eighth notes together, but in fact that would obscure beat 2, because we need a quarter note plus an eighth note for beat 1, and then an eighth note plus a quarter note in beat 2. Ooh, here's that same example written very ugly. This one starts off, it looks, just glancing at it, it looks like it has almost 4.5 beats, which would not be 9/8. 9/8 needs to have 3 distinct beats. So the preferred way of writing that would be the example above and to the right.